I won't pretend that Mr. Boyd and I didn't have a contentious relationship. He took issue with the church on more than one occasion.
You mean he took issue with your cult?
He misused that term as well. It's just the kind of rigid, closed-minded thinking that I preach against here. At one time or another, every great religion has been attacked as a cult.
So have most cults. Excuse me for a moment, would you?
Where are you? Well, the victim published almost 24 threatening responses you sent him after he posted a few articles criticizing the church's recruitment methods.
Well, I have the right to respond if somebody publishes lies about what we're trying to do here.
He told Mr. Boyd that his attacks had begun a chain reaction that would lead to his removal from this physical reality.
We meditate here. We practice energy transference. So when I wrote to him, I was merely absorbing his hateful energy and reflecting it back. Did I harm him physically? No. Did I appeal to the quantum source for swift and final justice? Perhaps.
In other words, you prayed for the guy to die.
It's not a crime, is it?
So we're done here. The church held a 12-hour service last night. Attendance was mandatory, so no one here could have killed Garrison Boyd.
We're just taking your new friend's word for it?
Her name is Aria, and yes, we are. When it became clear that this one would do little more than proselytize, I scanned his herd, and I realized that Aria was having second thoughts about being here.
Aria's a level 3 conduit.
After a brief conversation with Aria, aka Elizabeth Weinberg, I was able to determine that some unresolved issues from her childhood had led to a transference of a need for structure and discipline onto Mr. Finn. Elizabeth agreed and has forthwith terminated her relationship with your church.
What?
Wait a second, are you saying you deprogrammed her?
I would never use such a rigid and close-minded term. She did, however, share some useful information on the church's methods. Apparently, their esteemed leader likes to send his acolytes out to follow, photograph, and harass people who dare to criticize him. So she's currently in your office emailing me the dossier you compiled on Garrison Boyd. I'm hopeful it will shed some additional light on his final days. Miss Weinberg is leaving with us. Any attempt to hinder her return to her former life will be met with an energy transference most unpleasant.
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.
When I left the corporations as an engineer, I moved into the high desert in the United States, a place called Nuevo Mexico, about 3,000 meters above sea level is where my home is. And there are indigenous people, native people in that area in the early 1990s. And it was during this time that this part of our country was experiencing the worst drought in over 100 years. No rain during this time. And a native friend of mine called me one day and he said, "Greg, would you like to come with me to a place, a very special place, where my ancestors have gone for many, many years to pray rain?" So would you like to come with me to pray rain? Now I like the language that he used, because he said this place is special because the skin between the worlds is very thin in this place. I like that language. So I met my friend, and we went to this place, and it was a circle of stones, kind of like this. Not this exact place, but very similar to this place. Now, I was not prepared for what I saw, because I believed I would see some dancing, some chanting, some singing, some Native American stuff. And that's not what happened at all. My friend sat down and took off his old shoes. With his naked feet, he stepped into the stone circle. He honored his past. He said the words, "All of my ancestors, all of my ancestors, all of my ancestors are with me now." And then he closed his eyes and he held his hands in a prayer mudra like this. And he turned his back to me for about 20 seconds. And then he looked at me and he said, "I'm hungry. Would you like to go get food?" And I said, "Yes, but I thought you were going to pray for rain." And this is when he looked at me and he said, "No." He said, "If I pray for rain, rain could never happen." He said, because the moment you pray for something, you have just acknowledged it is not here now. If you say, "Dear God, please let there be rain. Please let there be healing in my loved ones. Please let there be peace in the world. Please let my soulmate come into my life." If you say that, what you're acknowledging is that it is not here now. You remember, the divine matrix is very literal. If you say, "Please let," the divine matrix says, "Okay, I will let and let and let," because there is no completion, there is no outcome. Does that make sense? So I asked my friend, his name was David. I asked my friend David, I said, "If you did not pray for rain just now, what did you do when you closed your eyes?" Such a beautiful story. He said, "When I closed my eyes, I felt the feeling as if the rain has already happened." He said, "I felt the feeling of what it feels like to feel my naked feet in the mud in my pueblo because there has been so much rain." He said, "I smelled the smell of what it smells like when the rain falls off of the earthen pueblo walls in our village." And he said, "I felt the feeling of what it feels like when I run through the fields of corn, and the corn is so high because there's been so much rain. He said, and then I gave thanks of gratitude and appreciation for the rain that has already happened. So he didn't ask for the rain. Now this is interesting. When those practitioners worked on the woman with the cancerous tumor, they did not judge the tumor as right, wrong, good, or bad. They accepted it as it was, and they said, now we're going to make a new reality. When my friend David prayed rain, he did not judge the drought. He said, this drought is our medicine until now, and now we will create new medicine. This is key. Feeling as if it has already happened. Well, I'll tell you the rest of the story. We had lunch that day. By the time I got back onto my property that afternoon, something began to happen that had not happened for a long time. Big black clouds were coming in from the eastern mountains, and it began to rain that afternoon. And it rained that night. It rained the next morning. It rained into the afternoon. By the evening, it had rained so much and the ground was so dry that it began to flood. The roads were flooded. The crops were flooded. The cattle were stranded. And I called my friend David on the phone and I said, this is a mess. I said, what in the world is going on? And he said, that's the part of the prayer the ancestors could never really explain. It's like they could get the rain to begin, but they didn't know how to tell it how much to rain. Now, I cannot prove to you scientifically that David's prayer made that rain happen. I cannot prove scientifically that those practitioners made the tumor disappear. But we can say there's a high correlation, a very high correlation between when they feel the feelings and when the change happens. Beautiful.
"20 years ago, I'm in this meeting. I'm in this huge, there's this huge conference table that seats 20 people, and I'm the only one there. I'm in the 29th floor in the financial district. There's this window, I can see the entire bay and Alcatraz and everything. And again, I'm about your age at this time. It's a conference room of my largest investor, this guy, I'll call him Joe. And Joe is this bigger-than-life person, hedge fund, magnate, household name. And I'm sitting there, and I am petrified. I am shaking. And my throat is dry, and I can hear Joe walking toward me. And then I hear the knob turn, and he walks in, as he always did, just huge personality. Graham, you know, he's all excited. And I'm sitting there, and he sits down, and he can see something's like really wrong. I tell Joe that His investment in my firm is down 50%. He's lost half his money. And it wasn't his firm's money, it was his personal money. And I can just see the energy drain out of him. And the worst part is he's trying so hard to be positive because he knows if he says the wrong thing, like he's just gonna crush me because I was so fragile, and he was he's my largest investor. I had been told no by over 100 people raising my first fund, and there were about 5 or 6 people like Joe who said yes, not because I had any track record, because I didn't, but because he believed in me, just me. He was investing in Graham Weaver. And that's what I had to show for him. I lost half his money. And it was the worst day of my career at that point, and even to this day. The thing that I thought I knew about investing back then, it was all wrong. What I thought I knew at the time was rule 1, don't lose money. And rule 2, never forget rule 1. So I spent all that time just playing small, just trying to protect my downside, trying not to lose really hard. So we bought businesses at a discount to their net asset value. And even when things went right, it didn't go that right. But there were 3 times I wrote literally in an investment memo that it is mathematically impossible to lose money on this investment. And we lost money all 3 times. So what I learned is that it's kind of like, imagine you start dating, and your only purpose of dating is not get your heart broken. And you're gonna have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And even if you have a good date, it's not gonna be that great because you're not really in it. But the more likely outcome is you're gonna guarantee the very outcome you're trying to avoid, which is you're gonna get your heart broken. And so I started deciding over the next 30 years, I started realizing that was 180 degrees from what I should be doing in investing. That no matter what you do in this life, if you're gonna invest, there's gonna be downside. You're never gonna get that to 0. You can reduce it maybe a little bit, but the more valuable part and the magic is what can you do on the upside? What can go when it goes right? In class I write, assume success. What happens if things go well? In 30 years of being a professional investor, I can summarize great investing in a single word, which is asymmetry. And you are looking for the biggest possible outcome relative to your risk. And your risk typically is just losing 1 time your money. That's all you're gonna lose. So you wanna be stacking criteria on top of each other where it becomes asymmetric. So for example, if you have the criteria of an amazing management team that is gonna work super hard and hire well, and they're gonna be in this industry that's got infinite capacity, and they could redeploy capital at high rates of return, and you can hold it for 10 years, and they wanna keep going, and you stack those on top of each other, they don't stack linearly, they stack logarithmically. And you can have an almost infinite outcome. You're not playing for 1.5 or 2 times your money as we were in the early days. You can be playing for 10, 20, 50, 100 times your money with that criteria. And you don't have to do many of those investments in your lifetime. So as I started realizing that this was how I was living my life investing, it also was how I was living my personal life. And I was just playing small. I was playing not to lose. I was just trying not to lose. And so what I'm going to share with you today is how to live an asymmetric life. And there are 4 principles. And if you get one of these principles right, you will dramatically improve your life. If you get 2 or 3 right, you'll have this magical, incredible life. But if you can run the table on all 4, you can have literally an infinite life. You can have almost anything that you want. And you can live with joy, and you can sustain, and you can have energy, and you can sustain that for decades. And I can tell you this from experience. Principle 1 is do hard things. So we have this thought that life is supposed to be easy, and that comfort is where we're going to gain happiness. So you can order Harmony Bowl from Sweet Greens on your app. You can binge watch Succession and Ted Lasso, and you can have a life of ease, and that will give you a quick hit of dopamine. But make no mistake, that is not the path. It is exactly the opposite. I rowed crew in college, and the way you measure progress in rowing and the way you kind of determine what boat you're going to, as Logan was saying, is you have an erg test. You sit on a rowing machine, you row 2,000 meters as hard as you can. And the saying is, if you get done with that erg test and you can pull 1 more stroke, you didn't pull hard enough. So it's going to hurt no matter what you do. It's going to hurt. Well, throughout the course of the season, like the day that I'd show up, which would be like September 1st, from that date all the way through March, I would improve my erg time by 20 seconds, roughly, from the first day with all the conditioning, everything we do. But so a big part of that would be rowing, stadium stairs, lifting weights, and on and on. It was grueling, and it was a lot. But all that stuff I just said would take about 6 months, and only 10 seconds of that 20 would come from that. The other 10 seconds would come in the first 2 weeks. You're like, what? So what happened in the first 2 weeks to give you 10 seconds? I'll tell you what didn't happen. You didn't change your cardiovascular fitness. You didn't change your strength. You didn't change your VO2 max or your technique. All you changed is your comfort to be uncomfortable. You realize that you could push yourself a lot harder than you thought you could. That's all that changed. That was half of the gains I would get all year would just be me reminding myself that I had a lot more than I thought I did. And that at 750 meters, when my heart rate's 175 beats a minute, I can keep going. This chart right here shows our lives. And this is what happens. We get kind of complacent, or we get comfortable. And if we want to move forward and get to the next peak, the magic is to understand that your life is almost always going to get worse first. Any change that you want to make is almost always going to get worse first. So if you're in a relationship and you have to have a hard conversation, that particular night, your life is going to get a little worse, and then you're going to come out the other and it's going to get better. Or if you need to leave a relationship that you shouldn't be in the first place, your life's going to get worse first. If you want to change careers and you want to learn something new, you're going to go down a learning curve. Your salary's probably going to go down. You're going to not be good at your job when you first start. Your life's going to get worse first. You want to start a new habit. You want to take a cold shower. You want to meditate. You want to start exercising. It's going to get worse first. And you're going to follow this pattern, but you need to realize that the thing that's keeping you there is the first move is always going to be worse. And eventually what's going to happen is these downward curves are going to get a lot shallower. Because you know what the biggest part of that curve is? It's just fear. The biggest part of that curve is just fear. So the more you put yourself in situations where you do hard things, the shallower and shallower those divots are going to get because you're going to remove that fear, just like I mentioned in the rowing example. I had no fear at 2,000 meters or at 1,500 meters. Everything that you want in this life is on the other side of worse first. If you want to have an asymmetric life, do hard things.
Hey, you epic being. Thanks for being here at Sundari Hodge, Infinite Potential Healing, Summit of Truth with you once more. And as always, thanks for being here. I hope this finds you well. I hope in these last few weeks, couple months and stuff, whatever's been going on in your world has been one of pretty epic progress, alright? There's obviously been an enormous amount and big variables going on, let alone the multi-D stuff, right? Which can be quite challenging for many to process and comprehend and all that sort of stuff. So if you've been really vigilant with my offerings over these last couple of months, I hope they've been an enormous ally though, as I've offered the last 3 GSFs with my epic ally SuperA, so shout out to you out there. And I'm grateful for her for allowing me to offer them, that were designed to be allies for you to sort yourself out with the mechanics that I offered, and that, let alone the pure source healing that we did in GSF 36, which was the last main release I offered. And it's hard to really fathom that was October 5th that we did that, right? So I wonder how it was for you versus now on that October 5th, and in between that actual date of that going on and releasing that particular part 36 in my last release a couple of weeks ago, or before I made that last release, I offered, in the storm of the US election, the big spell that I said, I offered our intuitive potential part 5 and 6, which were tests relative to what I sensed and relative to what was going to play out, which has, if you have been across them, and I might show the images at the end or just save them for another time to get into it more detailed. But ideally, if you've been thorough, then you gained a lot out of that. And so from my perspective, there's been an enormous opportunity to employ what's been going on to be an ally to training us up, as well as going back a bit before that, I did Emotional Mastery Part 8 and 9 that were about transmitting all the energy coming at us and turning it into a source of nourishment, because when it comes down to it, everything going on in our universe, right, whatever might be out there relative to the invaders or invader aligned or compromised people going at you and us and derailing everything, they're using our energy, right? So perhaps it's just that learning curve of how to actually employ it as our benefit and remove the charge or the perception of it being a negative and stuff like that. Perhaps there's a avenue that we can get to, an state relative to all where it is just basically all our benefit, right? So I'm not wanting this to be too long, so I'm just going to cover a few things, because that time since October 5th, and I've done many releases since then, to now, my last Friday, I did some really epic stuff that, you know, I don't really claim too much. I just do my thing. I'm in my world, and if it plays out positively in other respects, then that's a bonus. I don't aim for it or have an agenda, but over this 6 weeks, it's been particularly rough. And I always say that. The thing is, all right, it's that those of us that do this in the GSFs and have the awareness, all right, we're just aware of what goes on with us. Just because you might not experience it yourself doesn't mean it's not going on. You just haven't got to that level of awareness, which everything I've offered and my mechanics, I've basically given everything away, what I've learned, like MCK as pranic healing and stuff. There's just a threshold that you get to where you become aware of it, all right? Whether it's by your own effort, just epiphanies and threshold crossings and stuff, or you seek healers out, or you gain insight and stuff, or perhaps you get totally smashed and you have to put yourself back the way you're meant to be, right? So I might just show that parabolic image quick, right? So what I was just saying is, yes, I always offer transparency about what's going on, and it hasn't felt like we've had stability and stuff, and whatever we've been doing, we've been getting pushback. So those that are probably in that territory, and this is, I'm going to offer some really interesting concepts that we worked out over this 6 weeks that sort of help comprehend that, why it has been that way, all right? Because we're still playing catch up. We still had to cross over some hidden in the unknown sort of aspects that we have discovered in these last few weeks, which from my perspective led to this combination of, say, myself doing this grid work that felt like a massive completion and implementation. It was the first time I've done that in 18 months, I feel. And, you know, if you've been around me and what I've said about the dates and times and last 6 months, last 18 months sort of thing, it's, you know, doing that pure source healing, all right, of really working at that level, all right, getting that comprehension and tracking everything back. So many variables of experiences, hits, and reverse engineering the mechanics of things and stuff like that to get to this. It's been, I know from my perspective, I'm in original territory from where I'm offering. I see the barriers, most of the community sort of thing of the dogma of concepts that have not served us. If anything, they've been seeded to derail us. And yeah, I'm just going to be doing a bit of an overview of the bigger discoveries that we made, which I'll probably elaborate further in a specific shows releases relative to influences or other things in the future. What I'm aiming to do is just make this a marker point for most of you if you're here and you're vigilant with me. Like, I might be doing it at a random time to test everyone and stuff like that, and a lot of people might not be able to handle this because they're still battling their own resistance, and I'm not there anymore, so I'm not really a match to things and stuff. So I'm forging the new original path, the unexplored path sort of thing now, to forge it through the jungles of the bullshit out there and the bullshit artists, alright? So this last Friday was a big completion, but it revealed itself to be a lot more. So I'm wanting to get into that and just offer it as a reference point, like I said. Alright? So what I want to do now is just get into a few of the concepts. I'll offer a bit of a reference point now, and I'll get into them a bit more. Alright? So just quickly before I get into it as well, what I'm going to do out of all these concepts that I'm sharing here, and there's probably more that I'm forgetting and stuff like that. I went off for the bigger ones, but I've actually brewed quite a significant upgrade to my sovereignty declaration that I have on my Access to Me and website, www.servantoftruth.org. It's there at the front page, and a few other pages like the Ashiana page and the Access to Me page, and I offer it for free and stuff. And I'm brewing as I said, a pretty big update relative to these things that we've worked out. And so I've done it. I've tested it with a few people and offered it to a few of the hardcore people around me, just as a reference point for them to know what's going on. And I've employed it in some of my sessions and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm just giving a heads up. I'm brewing to release that. I just want to sit with it and see what bubbles up and stuff. And even saying this publicly beforehand, when I first released this back in February, I put it out there because I was going to release it on around the February 10th when we went into Year of the Dragon sort of thing, because I'm a pretty epic dragon and stuff. And I put a post on Facebook about how we've restored, and I've had help restoring dragon aspects of me and advising people to call their own back, because shout out to the ally that helped this, they recognized that one of my main dragon aspects, even in this recent time, was being tortured and hypnotized and mind controlled to go out and do negative shit. So that was another level, in the dream times and stuff like that, because one of the things I'm going to talk about is the backdoor sort of black hat. I made a mention of that movie in the last release, as well as Special Ops Lioness TV show on Paramount. Might be on Amazon as well now, but that's a pretty profound show. So for those guys that are up for homework and watching a lot of shows and stuff, I highly recommend that, because I'll get into that about the light and dark and the grey sort of thing, because one of the things I'm going to talk about is that sort of thing in a little bit. But yeah, I'm brewing to do a pretty significant upgrade to my sovereignty declaration that includes all this stuff. So again, I did that earlier last week, and I feel it was a big component to doing this big completion grid work and clearing out of all the BS. And I've been very generous over the last 9 years with the locations I deal with and stuff, and being proactive with people, as I've sort of offered many times, brewing to the 2019, 2020 stuff. I feel there was an urgency for many, many years to get things done, sort of thing, get people up to speed, and operating with a lot of being a hen in the fox house, like I said, with all these compromised fracker invader beings, and still being dealing with them and stuff. But I thought we were all unity sort of BS crap. Like all these stuff I talk about, I've bought into more than probably you, right, over the years and stuff, and explored them to the nth degree sort of thing, to really know how, much nonsense is out there sort of thing. So I usually explore things thoroughly to discern them, alright? But yeah, so I'm brewing that, but I'm just going to show you the unknown image, alright? So I'm thinking of doing another unknown release part 2. I offered one last year with going into this these concepts. But as always, it's been 1, 2, 3, 4. And a lot of you guys, if you're here, you're pretty hardcore already, alright? It's been a bit like this, alright? But ideally, this last 18 months and even these last 6 weeks, like I said, but the different time frames, like 6, 12, 18 months and stuff, you've gone from not knowing much to being highly aware, but a lot of stuff is still going on, and like I said, effort to be transparent. It is what it is. We're being hit and haven't known what's going on and stuff like that, and there hasn't been many of us, very few of us have taken a lot of responsibility on, and I'm really proud of some people around me that have really stepped up and are engaging their reality authority, like Pure Source Reality Authority now. And we always vet and double check and stuff and feed, offer a lot of data components and stuff, and this last 6 weeks has been very rich on that to help get an understanding of some really big strategic wins that we've had, alright? So just remember the unknown sort of concept. I would highly recommend going and watching that again and stuff, right? But I'll get into what's gone on and what we worked out, right? So this is the updated Pure Source concept that I've offered with the Invader overlay, and if you really invested in GSF 36 where we offered what was going on, Pure Source was pretty much trapped and used as a source of nourishment, a bit like the metaphor of what it feels like they're aiming to do here, without any resistance and stuff. But we're here, and just being able to comprehend all of this, right? Like I've put into my sovereignty declaration, right? What we know now in the last 18 months. Those of you that have been in the trenches with me, I'm very grateful, right? Because I've committed to this a long time ago, and I'm just who I am, and I'm a problem solver, right? And this is like the ultimate conundrum, right? And yeah, this last 6 weeks has been profound. So why I'm bringing this up is we cleared basically the triangle aspect, okay? And so it was right after GSF 35 got released, just before the Trump election sort of thing. And then the following weekend I released Our Intuitive Potential Part 5 and 6. Right after that for me, so that's probably the reference point, GSF 35. Because even offering that this was a concept was a massive victory, but it was also a risk and stuff. And in the lead up to the US election storm, to me, doing it about a month out, the actual date that we did the mission, was quite poetic if you see now, right? Because to me, like us doing that, it made it a lot more obvious for us operating at 22D and 1000D and stuff, but it also revealed a lot, okay? So what we did in GSF 35, 36 on October 5th was remove that. And so what we've had to do, like I said, it was really game on right after GSF 35 was released for myself. And I managed to put myself back together maybe 5 days later just to be ready to do Our Intuitive Potential Part 5 and 6. So I never do anything unless I feel like I'm clear and stuff. If I'm not, then I'll just step back. I'm not here to force anything. It's a marathon, not a sprint, alright? Doesn't mean I'm perfect as well. The level of targeting going on, like I've literally got a bodyguard, right? So you think I've been hit, you imagine how hard their situation has been, alright? So I'm lucky to be here, and yeah, it's just, I won't get into much more than that, but it needs to be offered, alright? So it was on, right, for several weeks, and it was like, what the F this time sort of thing. And so we were checking this, we were playing catch up and smashed and stuff, a bit like that parabolic that I showed. But in this 6 weeks, since GSF 35 release, there was an effort to reanimate this, alright? So part of the discernment and checking, once we're all not playing catch up and being smashed, then we could get proactive and look. There was definitely an effort to reanimate this, nothing to the level that it was, alright? But it was a possibility, like an apparatus was reinserted into this, so that had to get taken care of, right? And it was, okay? So I just want to offer that as reference and move on, alright? I'm going to cover a concept pretty quick with a few images, right? I'm going to look to explain them in a greater detail in the future, but this release is a GSF 37 post pure source healing update and grid work, right? An implementation on Earth of all this stuff at a very high level, secure level, right? So I offered this, I'm pretty sure, going back to around GSF 32, where we were playing massive catch up again, and a lot of people were being hit, and everything was on the line, and they were going for Earth's soul, and isolating us from the surface. Even in June, July, we worked out that a lot of the Earth stuff was being redirected, particularly at women. You know, the emotional state that they were putting in Earth was being amplified, so a lot of women were messed up, sort of thing. Like, it wasn't your fault, but where it was coming from. So we worked all that out. But one of the things I do in my sessions and with my allies is everything we do is injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere, and violation is our asset. So to me, a very few people at a very high level can have a lot of impact, and that's the parabolic thing, like myself, of working out all this mechanics to be successful and superior, you know. So I'm just going to move on, alright? So this was an image I shared around that era as well. It's a bit like a metaphor of those of us around the surface that have worked hard on these concepts and trust what I offer and stuff, and then employ it. And by that, then the potential is that you're a guardian of Earth, alright? All the concepts offered by other people have, in my opinion, we've got to look at it as like everything that's filed up until this point, and that's where I use the parabolic new territory sort of stuff. Because, say, we ordered a Dashiana Dean metaphoric beloved sort of thing, we worked out who they are and what's going on there. Part of it was offered in GSF 36, but there was another recording a couple of days after it on the 8th of August that we went a bit further, and I might offer that in another variable some other point. But say, you know, you guys out there that have been hardcore, that have been under the pump, it's probably because you're taking on a lot of responsibility, because we're meant to have a lot more, alright? What I'm getting to is this backdoor sort of hacking stuff that we worked out that has been an issue, because it's affected our body architecture, and it's been taken advantage of and stuff, right? Because it gets into a concept I want to offer called divide light, right? So I'm just going to move on, but this is how it's been from a idealist point of view, but it hasn't been clean. It's been very tough, right? But I offered this early in the year because we defended Earth around GSF 32, 33, probably not even knowing it, right? So that was 6 months ago, at least 6 to 8 months ago now, and our growth has been parabolic of what we know now, right, to get to this point of what I offer about last week, right? So I offered this particular image relative to all that around the same time, 6 months ago. And a lot of the players in the community have been going at us without knowing it on a higher level. And then, you know, we're trying to do our best, and a lot of infiltrators, and we've been up against it, right? So I just wanted to share, because it's, over this last 6 weeks, it's been like that still, right? And why is it still, right? And that's where I'm getting to a couple of the discoveries that it feels like we're on the other side of it. Like, literally, it feels a lot better, right? So this is a new expanded image of all that sort of stuff, right? So the numbers aren't accurate and all this sort of stuff. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be just a reference of concept sort of thing. Let's say you see the red coming at us all in different parts of the world, and negative beings going at us and stuff like that. And what I found is, I'll really get into this. It's such a fascinating thing of how we work this out. This is probably the most complex thing, alright? But long story short, you know, I'm pretty hardcore and I do a lot of work on myself. It doesn't mean I'm clear. And I get a lot of attention in a negative way, alright? Like whatever you think you've been through, it's a whole nother level, right? I do have mosquitoes around, so if I'm stopping, starting and editing, it's probably because I'm having fun with them. But what was going on after that GSF 35 release was, it was next level, alright? And say if I'm getting hammered, I go to ground sort of thing and isolate and all that sort of stuff. And I'm very aware, like in angles and stuff, it hasn't been all that clear in the past, but you know, the progress we're making, it becomes a lot clearer. And I could feel stuff from certain angles and I knew exactly what it was, and it was like, you know, if you're unsure of things, so you go into the unknown, then there can be fear sort of stuff. Not saying I'm in fear, but it's, I have a very good body mechanics of not allowing the emotional state to dictate things, alright? But I also realize that there's times to be proactive and conservative, and stuff is going on, don't know where it's coming from, it's time to retreat and just assess and get stronger, overcome it, identify issues, heal, and then put yourself back out there sort of thing. Right after the GSF 35, as I said, it was next level, and I could actually perceive certain variables, and it was unique variables, and using the mechanics I could get, assuming things are good without knowing the full levels of shit going on. It's you go with the mechanics you know, right? I might just show that algorithm image quickly, right, relative to mechanics and pattern recognition. So it was a very rich time of employing variables relative to what we knew and what I particularly knew, and using the mechanics I had at the time, not making assumptions, but just not realizing that there, you know, I'm always vigilant on the unknown, so there's always more to know. Like a lot of these dots around here, they potentially can be variables that are needed to complete a pattern sort of thing, and I've got always the question mark for more and stuff like that. So I'm always vigilant for expansion, right? You know, what we know versus what is just such a minuscule fraction of the totality of everything, so there's always more to know. And the consistency of going on is, you know, this is an occupied planet that's been under control potentially for 25,000 years. They know everything inside out, and they know us inside out. We have no idea about anything, right? And this particular thing relative to the Black Hat movie, backdoor sort of stuff, right? It's a bit of a confirmation of that. So using the mechanics I had at the time, it was like, there's a potential variable angle that I need to discern or heal or step back from and stuff. But the fascinating thing is, at the same time, they were getting the same feedback from me and all this sort of stuff, and it was like, hang on, what's going on here? You know, potentially we've always got blind sights and stuff like that, and we have issues, alright? But yeah, I'll just go back to that other image. So just going through this quick, right? And I'll elaborate on more. Let's say some of us, we're pretty hardcore if you get me, right? Like, our awareness is very, very good. We're very wise and experienced and all this stuff. But there was negative feedback coming, and it wasn't just one way, it was two ways. So I was like, what? So one of the cool things that I used to do for Andrew, right, when I was operating with him to make him look good, is I would deliberately ask bad questions that are wrong, so he could provide the right answer, right? And I knew what the answer was, but I know how to make people look good, right? And another thing I know how to do, if you guys were around then, I used to write a lot of the emails for all the shows and stuff like that. I know how to speak to each individual in a group sort of thing, because I don't come with any baggage. I know what all the variables are, and I know how to speak in a very neutral way, alright? I did it for many years, alright? So if you think I'm personal with you or anything like that, it's not. I'm very masterful at my delivery on a different level, okay? So what's important is to be honest of what's going on. Because when you get honesty and authenticity, you get the variables for the context, alright? And so I put a lot out there to potentially trigger people to get the reference of that. And ideally, those are the GSF. They're not even governed by the effect of, say, being triggered or anything. They're actually like, they know me to my core and they know where I come from, and it's always about potential progress and solution, alright? And a lot has to be said to get there, okay? But I did trigger the shit out of people deliberately and stuff, and put it out there what's going on, because again, going back to the pattern recognition, if you're holding stuff back and you're worried about hurting people's feelings and all that bullshit, we get Earth, alright? Like, offending people is like a criminal offense, you know what I mean? It's designed never for us to work anything out. So what we worked out is there was something else going on, and I'll get into the mechanics how we worked this out. It was brilliant. Like I said, I had a bit like Homer Simpson and the clown school, if you remember that episode where it would just be like clown school. Well, instead of clown school, I had the movie Black Hat, which was all about hacking and stuff, and it was pretty profound. And I've shared it with the guys that I deal with, and I put it out publicly and stuff, alright? But what was going on with me, I busted this Dreamtime thing. I had a really profound dream where I was in like this one-story apartment block, like a cheap hotel sort of thing, like motel. And there was a front door, and there was like a U-turn sort of through the house or flat. And the U-turn, like, it goes through the main room and sort of a kitchen, and then it goes to the right. The kitchen has all these drawers and stuff for utensils and that. It goes around the right for a bathroom and bedrooms and stuff, and then it goes to another right that leads to the exit, which is through the laundry sort of thing, right? And then there's a back door. And the back door, if I just put this image down. So the back door is usually a rectangle, right? Well, the back door was perpendicular sort of thing, not perpendicular but angled across the door, so it was like at a 45-degree angle. So there was gaps and stuff, so the door was off the hinges and stuff. But the metaphor of that was the back door was hacked, and I was like, wow. And I knew he did it, right? I had my dreams hacked a while back with, say I was in the Yucatan region and stuff like that, and I was going out and doing sightseeing or going to temples and stuff with people out there, alright? And then we came back to the hotel room and we chilled, and then the individual and their partner said, oh, I just want to go out and stuff like that. So they were using my codes in the dream sort of thing to do stuff and that, and I totally bust them. There is the whole using someone else's residual sort of going on, and that's why I said about the dragon sort of stuff, because that got busted. And I know, again, there's all that residual, my essence sort of thing being used to mess with people on that level, that's created another level of distortion that's probably been going on with you guys and stuff, right? I'll just go back to that image quick, right? So this was one of the most complex things to work out, right? Long story short, what we worked out is there's been, from the get-go, this whole hacking backdoor architecture throughout us, alright? So if you appreciate what I've offered about the wiping and the hacking that's going on and stuff, and so long story short, what I feel is, not that it was allowed to be discovered, but say the level of discovery that we got and I got from it was, ideally it would be like, oh, we've got that variable, we know it, we won't look any further and we'll move on, sort of thing. So it was a bit like the tip of the iceberg. So you imagine, I offered in our Intuitive Potential Part 6, I offered a lot of homeland clips, and there was this substructure in this big building and stuff, and I didn't include them going in the elevator, but it was like, the building went 6 floors down, it was right on the big internet pipe sort of thing, alright? So it was like a social engineering fusion center sort of thing, right? But just imagine there's all these layers, and say from how I perceived it before, we maybe have one or two, right? So it's hard to do, 1, 2. What I got from this is there's been a whole, like, that's only the tip of the iceberg. There's all this like darknet sort of multi-layer sort of thing that's been like a hacking highway that all Team Fracker have been used constantly to go at us. So I guess you guys appreciate from me that I'm aware of certain things and I can sense stuff, and I'm not really worried about tracking it back. Say one awesome being that I interacted with last week said I did like 3,000 to 4,000 things in just the pranic healing of their clearing and stuff. So I don't really care. I'm aiming to get people on the game, and why isn't this working sort of thing. So us busting this backdoor network hacking was the whole highway that just the sheer compromise, hacking codes and derailing us and targeting us and doing this negative feedback against allies and stuff. We took all this apart. And not only that, say you imagine a building with like 6, 7 floors, right? The lower ones were full of all dense energy and messed up shit, right? And what was going on in them, that was feeding like negative dark energy into our bodies, right? So we've got all this hack. So you imagine like we go down to basements of what's been going on, the hacking and the wiping, we clear that, all right? But then there's all this substructure. And in the movie Black Hat, there's this concept called Black Widow, and one of my allies referred to that, and I was like, why are you talking about Black Widow? They were talking relative to the Marvel movie, but it's a bit like Cliff High if you've gone to him, like hearing those linguistics relative to, say, my context for the movie. If you go and watch the movie, it's profound, right? Chris Hemsworth, a character, was a hacker in that, and he got busted doing hacking, and he thought he was safe because he wiped all his stuff, right? But then the lady said that the NSA had this Black Widow software that was recovery from lost sectors on the hard disk and stuff, and so they needed it to rescue these disks to work out the hackers that were doing the meltdown and just doing really diabolical stuff in that movie, right? And yeah, so what we worked out is this substructure and all that was where a lot of the negative shit was being fed into us, like a network sort of stuff, and it's been built into us. So you imagine like the Babylon Massacre, we're being wiped and architecturally set up for enormous vulnerability. So potentially we're being blindsided by that. Say we go into it and see it, there's like defense mechanisms to like wipe us, and it's like, what the F happened, right? So we had all these different variables of different people. Like I said, the Black Widow was from one person's contact, but for me, from that movie. So like I watched that movie a few times, and it was just, I had the backdoor dream hacking and stuff like that. So yeah, we busted that, and all the dark energy coming up from the base, right? That's been going into our brains to keep us locked into like 5 to 10% capacity. So again, like the Leviathans, they don't have that limit, and the invaders and stuff, but we've got that handicap as well. So what we did is we removed all that shit, right, from everything, and it's not just fucking gonna happen anymore sort of shit, right? So that was a big victory, and I'll talk about it a lot more, but I'll just go back to the image quick, alright? So what I'm offering with this backdoor network that we removed, and I'm going to be including in my sovereignty declaration upgrade, is just imagine how handicapped we've been to be able to do what we've been doing, and yet we're still relentless enough to get through it and still deal with all this, and it hasn't been enough, right? So just, I'm feeling that was all inserted into us by design a very long time ago, so we were totally vulnerable to all the stuff going on. It was never meant to be discovered, so it's a huge, huge, huge victory just to get that concept, right? So I'm going to move on, right? So I've already been talking quite a bit to get to this, so I'm going to try and do it pretty quick, but with enough detail to help you comprehend all this, because these are some really massive discovery victories, right? So the next concept I'm going to offer is something I'm going to define linguistically as a new total concept of understanding, and I'm going to call it divide light. All right, so divide light, and it's based on light and dark. All right, and long story short, and this is not directly from me, it was one of my allies that offered this in this few weeks because we were making massive parabolic progress, is they worked out that light itself were going at us. All right. So in the TV series Special Ops Lioness, all right, there's operators there that are very high level, and they have this concept of light and dark. So light is the public military, the dark is the black projects doing negative shit, and then there's these grey operators, right, that are beyond it. And it's not ideal because the grey operators do dark stuff, but it's what we've had to do is realize that we're not attached to any of this stuff, right? Everything going on is potentially corrupted and stuff, and I'll get into some aspects of that, right? But I just want to show you how the divide light and dark, right, has been used, right? So this is one of my best images, the awareness journey, all right? You've seen it many times if you've been around me. This is our journey going through all the different levels of stuff and what we've been up against. I call it the spiritual no man's land. I'm not going to show that image here. I've shared it elsewhere, but I just want to get to this and offer it, all right? So it's never been fair. As I said, the backdoor network has made it even harder, right? We've only just learnt that after all these years, right? And cleared it up for everyone. It's no longer it's a violation of the highest level that just got its ass handed to it, right? So this is how it's been. And this is even an idealist view, because just like blown away by what's going on and stuff, right? So ideally the mechanics is once we get to 22D, it's ideally safe. This is going to offer some context for a lot, right, of why that may not have been for a lot of people. That's why I like, say me, I'm super vigilant and very proactive, and the antidote on one level is just to be a healer, alright? So if you employ these and able to heal yourself, then you've been able to endure all this stuff. If you haven't, then I've offered it for many years. I offered a video called Trinity of Choice many years ago, which is about doing good, doing bad, and doing nothing. Like, inaction has a cost, alright? If you're looking for the wrong in everything and you're justifying staying where you are, it's got nothing to do with me or what I'm offering. It's, you have to jump on and get into it and get onto your path, right? Our peak awareness is very rare. It takes a lot to get there, and it hasn't been easy, right? So you got to focus on how can I maximize my peak awareness time in my life, which might only be a 30-year era in your whole life, and out of that very few hours sort of thing, right? So yeah, being a healer has been the variable that's my greatest ally in these last few years, alright? So, but I'll just move on, alright? So that's the awareness journey, okay? As it was. And I'll keep referring to this because I'm going to expand it a little bit as to how this has been compromised, alright? But I'll probably only use this one going forward, alright? Mainly still. So this is I'm going to employ this concept relative to light and dark, right? Because it's the same as the metaphor of Law and One or the invasion sort of thing, alright? So, even me, I mean, light and dark is a concept out there, and it's like, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. I just tend to do my own thing, and ideally if I'm set up right, then the outcome will be positive, right? And our nature is to do the right thing and just not intentionally do wrong or derail things or hack people or do negative grid work on the earth and shit like that, right? We've never known these invaders have been around only until recently, and working with negative ETs in particularly and stuff, right? But the light and dark, right? To me it's like that metaphor of the Law of One sort of concept. It's part of the same thing. Or from a conceptual impartation sort of appreciation of the teaching sort of stuff, it's the antidote to the dark, alright? So there's a balance, and that's, I might be employing the yin-yang symbol somewhere in the image overlay and stuff like that. To me, I'm seeing that as a bit of a another flower of life, sort of daisy of death, as Ash would say. It's a negative image, negative symbol relative to this divine light, right? Because what we found, and this is shout out to one particular individual, is the light was going at us, and it's like, far out. We're on your side, aren't we? And all this sort of stuff. But what it turns out is there was an anti-God that was all behind it, right? So light and dark have been two creations from the same being all along that have been just fracking with us, right? So, you know, like the idealists in the spiritual community think, oh, I'm a light worker and all this sort of shit. Well, the whole concept of light is distorted. Everything is trickled down from this anti-God, right? And the best way for me to describe the anti-gods, right? I'll just go back to the source image quick, right? Because if this is the source image again, right? So if you listen to the whole of GSF 36, and I highly recommend it, it's one of my greatest achievements and for all of humanity. But to me, like, what we worked out is the negative mother sort of thing, right? And it was like, source is a masculine that's very naive, got hijacked by a street smart player woman, alright? And that's where a lot of the negative feminine distortion comes from, that, right? And it's not anything negative to females or anything, but there was a negative mother aspect that was related to the invader apex sort of thing. So to me, the anti-gods, and I've got stuff to talk about the anti-gods going back to April, one of my allies, we'd done a lot with that, right? And it was like, from that it was like seen as the anti-gods are like a negative brother of pure source. But I would offer, from my perspective, it's like, say this is like a wise older lover of, say, pure source, right, that comes from another universe. Well, she has a couple of stepkids that are brought into a marriage, right, compromised marriage. So a lot of the negative kids from that have come in to be anti-gods, plus, you know, and it's not the whole invader source, it's just like a dynamic sort of thing. If she's a player, she wants to get, like, breed sort of thing to get the rights to stay here sort of thing, then they've birthed, like, very negative, bratty children, right, that are these negative gods that have just got the corruption in them sort of thing at the get-go. So that's a bit of a simplistic view of these anti-god level. So that, imagine they're just children, stepchildren, or brother-in-laws of source that didn't really want all the Carney family sort of shit, alright? So I'll just go back. So yeah, this divide light sort of stuff, right? So it's a similar sort of concept, right? So the yin-yang opposite of darkness sort of thing. What it turns out, it's the same being that created both sides that are just part of the same apparatus, right? And so we tracked it back with this individual that I know, and it turned out that it's all that, right? And so we've been making progress, so light's been turned on us, alright? Right? So I'm going to show you an expanded view of the awareness journey now, alright? So this is meant to be the same as the other one, but it's just got some more information about the divide light, alright? So the same thing going on, but what we learn is dark goes, say, to source level, 22D, maybe 12, 11.5D sort of thing. But then light goes up to 22D and more, right? And what was going on was all the negatives are just going into light to access the higher level. And there was this big smorgasbord pooling of all our talents, right? For all the invaders to use at their leisure, right? So I talked about the Black Hat sort of movie and the cupboard's been raided, right? You imagine big white drawers that are wired with all the utensils and stuff. Well, they were like the precious code sort of thing. And the back door was blown off sort of thing to hack into what was precious. And the codes were raided, so the drawers were all empty, alright? So it was like, how is all this still happening sort of thing? So that was related to the backdoor network that they're using. And then they were using the divide light, which proved to be just an anti-god, right? that were still accessing our stuff. And to me, like, the 15D should have been the limit, even if they're stealing our codes this way, right? And we should be in plain sailing. But it turned out that they were actually accessing 22D, right, via this anti-God sort of structure, okay? So that all got dusted, right? That is no more, right? So the idealist view from this point of view, and getting into this grid work and this completion of 6 weeks later sort of thing, after October 5th, was getting rid of that. The byproduct is it's plain sailing, all right? But yeah, what was going on is that some of the very nasty players out there were doing like a traveling carny circus of roll up, like auctioning off our talents that they'd stolen and moving around in dimensional levels and space and stuff to be a bit like a auction. There's some series out there that have auctions for like human trafficking and all sorts of shit. And it was a bit like that sort of thing, but they were doing it with our codes and our best tech, right? And that's how they were able to access us and derail us, right? So I'm offering this now as a big variable because we feel like we've got real strategic victory that's gotten on the other side of this, okay? So I'll talk about this in more detail and stuff in their own separate concept, but I just want to offer it here as a reference point, right? So yeah, I'm just trying to not be too long and offer this whenever I offer it, alright? But this gets back to last Friday, the 22nd of November, which, you know, was up and down the awareness journey and going through all this stuff. Took us a few weeks to get WTF'd, like, what the F is going on? And it's like, oh, this, and then we started really going parabolic, right? So, yeah, then it was just like circumstances presented themselves for the potential for, say, myself. Like, I'm not doing this as like any need to be put out. I never really talked about the good work, but my confidence in saying this is based on how it feels now and stuff. So I did a bit of a personal journey, very demanding. It was very hot at my end, and was able to get out to my locations and stuff, and I left early evening and like midday early. I ended up finished quite early in the morning, my Saturday and stuff. And the reason why I'm offering this is, for me, it was a personal thing. It felt like I completed my part to get to this level, like it was like a significant win getting the pure source cleared and that, and then the reaction to that we had to overcome, and all this discovery in that time and stuff, and it felt like a massive strategic anchor point victory, sort of marker point, alright? And then I went out there and did my thing, and I'm very cagey in future sort of stuff. I never talk about what I'm doing in the future, and if you've gone through GSF 34, 35 and 36, I was testing on the security of that with SuperA and stuff, and testing her and that. And yeah, one of the big things with the Divide Light that I just need to put in as well is that, and it was with her, is, you know, we'd been chipping away and stuff, right? And this fits in before the grid work as well, right? This is a big variable, is what we worked out relative to the Divide Light. And I might just offer that image again quick, right? Is that a lot of us have an affinity to the indigenous, all right, and what they're going through, and the plight and the constant hardship that they all go in and stuff like that. What we worked out is that's a light concept from the get-go. All of the indigenous stuff and why it just seems to fail and lures us in and stuff and never have a solution. It was never designed to have a solution, right? So what we had to do is actually remove the whole variable, all the stuff off the earth and all the divide and all the compromise and anything relative to that from all of Earth's surface, right? So I just sent an email out my day and stuff to let a few people know, and I've been checking some people because I know there's people in the community that portray themselves as being an ally, but they're actually doing the opposite to compound all this stuff, and they've been working with Tralateers sort of shit, right? So it's not ironic, because they're trying to reimpose that suffering on the land, reverse engineer, right? They're not on our side. And one of the things relative to my crystals and all that sort of stuff, we upgraded them all around the world to the pure source anchoring of all this stuff. So I've been very generous in my crystals, and yeah, I'll talk about that in the grid stuff, that a lot of negative stuff was being done to them, like sacrifices and spells and shit to be weaponized and derail everything in the sacred site. So that's why I went out to them and stuff, and with all this completion and stuff. But removing the indigenous stuff off the earth and all that program as a part of the divide light to set us up for failure was a huge victory as well. To me, it was a bit like, if you've listened to the Metatron recordings and the plight of when things were getting worse and worse and worse, the metaphor is they didn't act, they chose inaction, and they allowed it all to fester for so long to get to this point. Well, to me it was like, nah, we've learnt all those lessons, it hasn't worked, we need to remove it. So it's not meant to offend anything in that, but that era is over, right? It's not a part of our solution, it's been a part of this problem, right? So I'm just offering that here for you guys to take on, and just keep observing out there. You know, you'll be able to discern whether people are actually tuning into things or they're wanting to get popular. They've got ambition and they're using all the cliche sort of spiritual shit to get famous, because it resonates with the bullshit artistry that most people have taken on, right? To repeat all the same shit that isn't solution, that compounds all this, and we never get there, right? So I'm just offering that now in this reference point, this post GSF 36. Ideally a short release that's turning into a longer one. That's something we did, and it was a big component to get to the grid work that I did last week, but it also turned into a lot more, right? So I might have shown the video at the front that I took, saw kangaroos up there and stuff, and I saw other kangaroos. Like, it was interesting at the start. When I got there, the female kangaroo was there at one site, and then the other site there was a big, like, male. They're like really buff sort of things, just standing on the side of the road, seeing me off sort of thing. I saw foxes and other things. It was a bit later, like I did it in the dark and stuff, so it was very demanding physical work, walking a lot of kilometers with big bags of crystals and stuff. But so I did that on my Friday, and I just had the feeling during it that the coast was going to be clear. So there's some people that have been chewed out over the years around me and stuff, and potentially thinking it's me and stuff, but I know all this hacking stuff, a lot of people being turned on me and all this sort of shit, right? And that's cool. I'm not never saying I'm perfect, I'm doing my best, and I've been a lightning rod of the targeting, and you should hear what's happened to my bodyguard, right? But yeah, it was just very interesting. A lot of us have been overextended and taking on way more responsibility than what we should, but there just hasn't been any allies and stuff. And it was very interesting because I did my thing on my Friday, and I just let a few people know, and I showed what went on, because I like just giving the data to these high level beings, alright? So I'll just show you that other image quick. So I like feeding back to the ones that I've sort of added and on our side and stuff, to give them the data, because that might be a big download variable for expansion of their awareness and seeing the patterns from their end and stuff, and vetting it and checking angles and all that. But what it turned out was others were actually doing it at the same time, right? Or doing ceremonies they didn't even know why, right? Because it was like many of us, and I'm just offering this because the reference point of Friday the 22nd of November, Friday, Saturday, around that time, because perhaps if you've been online with this without even knowing it, then maybe you were doing something that you didn't even know. And I would offer it, you don't even need to know it. You being here aware of this stuff is enough. To me, grid work isn't like doing some John Cleese funny walk from Monty Python sort of shit, right? It's just like being your best in the moment, in any moment. Every breath is good work, alright? So if you've been really vigilant, you've done your sovereignty sort of stuff, potentially energy hygiene is your mastering and stuff, then to me it's like you've been a part of this. A lot of people, they don't have the self-awareness, like in the parabolic, they're being smashed and not even knowing it. But, you know, keep putting the pedal to your metal of your potential. It's like the byproduct will become awareness, right, in whatever way that is for you. And a lot of people, they self-sabotage and shut themselves down by their mechanics, right? You got to let go of the 3D sort of shit, right? Get out your own way. It's feel, not intellect, right? So I hope this is all very interesting. It's like felt like a really big, significant victory to get there, and I feel ridiculous amount of negative shit's been done to say towards what I've been trying to do and stuff like that we've never known. And this last Friday it was like we got superiority over it all. We finally got it all implemented, and it's very solid now, like it's probably never been, right? So it was really cool because it's like I've had a very significant number for me, like I'm very elusive and stuff, just mega synchronicities of people that I've known for many years that I just haven't been able to interact with because it's not been safe and stuff. It's just, the synchronicity has been off the charts, and it feels very disarming. Like if you've been armed up for a long time, you get a lot of fatigue from being able to let your guard down and stuff, and it's not all perfect. There's still a lot of challenge for a lot of people and stuff, but I feel like, you know, you might be at your wit's end and all this sort of shit and stuff, and it's like that exhaustion is like right at the finish line. It's just time to just push through it a bit more, and potential is off the charts, right, brewing for us. So I hope this helps, right? I wanted to offer a quick release that hasn't been so quick. Maybe I'm offering it in the middle of the week. Maybe I do more teachings later on in the weekend and stuff. We'll see. Maybe I'm just waiting for the weekend to offer this, alright? But I hope you take on board these variables I offer. I'll look to expand in greater detail in future teachings and stuff, and I just really wanted to get a reference to you guys, alright? So if you've been committed and invested heavily in all that I've done over the years and stuff, and still here, maybe you've been chewed out and stuff, maybe you have been and you found me after a long time just randomly, and this is why, right? So this isn't about me, it's about all of us and what we've worked together to forge, right? The solution to great mystery, like I said in my sovereignty declaration, right? So we're just going to have to see how things play out, right? As I offered about the election sort of stuff, don't trust it, right? There's a lot of positive that's going to get relief, but we're going to have to keep an eye on it, right? So thanks for being here. Thanks for allowing me to be a part of your journey, and I hope you get a lot from this. And until next time, guys, take care. Be safe. Be relentless. Choose the hard path if I've shown that video at the start, right? So keep being you, alright? Thanks for all you're doing that no one recognizes. And until next time, lots of love. Andre out. Bye for now.
lemon in December, heading for the city lights. 975, we sharing each other, nearer than farther. The scent of the lemon drips from your eyes. We are the people that rule the world, what's running in every boy and girl, all rejoicing in the world. Take me now. We can drive, we live the adventure, love in the summer, follow the sun tonight, reminiscing of the times of life. For each every other, the feeling is stronger. Shock at 11, got lost in your eyes. Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Can you remember in human eyes? It was so where we'd energize, lie in the sand and visualize like it's 75 again. We are the people that rule the world, what's running in every boy and girl, all rejoicing in the world. Take me now. We can drive. Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Know everything about you, know everything about me, know everything about us. I know everything about you, know everything about me, know everything about us. Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now?
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.